Hello dear book dragons. I'm making a little shorter video today about two books I read, mostly about one very special book that I've read, which is so good. There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak, and she's a wonderful Turkish English, well, she's Turkish living in England, in London, and this is the third book I read from her. And it's such a beautiful, poetical, lyrical book, and it's very interesting. As you can see, I put a lot of notes in here. I'm going to read you several quotes from it so you can hear her, how she sounds. And this is a book about three different people. And the beginning is the first one is a king, Ashurbanipal, in Mesopotamia, 6,000 something before Christ. I usually write in my book diary, but because I wanted to write so much, I had to write in another notebook as well. And yeah, it's 6,400 BC. So he has this beautiful city called Nineveh, which I've never heard of before. I just love that name, which makes me think of King Arthur. Kind of funny, because yeah, you hear soon. And it's a city by the river Tigris. I think probably Tigris. This King Ashurbanipal, yes. And this is a book about the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's about a forgotten goddess called Nisaba, and water. So you could say water is a theme throughout the whole book, and also the Epic of Gilgamesh and Lamassus, which I'll tell you a bit more about. And what did it say more? Yeah, water, rivers. So after the first chapter is about this king, and you follow a raindrop falling on his head. That's how the book starts. And yeah, his empire falls. So it's just one or two short chapters about him, and then we get to the real story. And the first person we meet after him is Arthur, who's a young boy in London during 1800s. Let's see. 1852. So the story starts in 1852 when he's just a young boy, and he's extremely intelligent. Well, we actually get to see his birth. Well, yeah, his mother and father lives in a slum, and when he's born, she's by the river. It's just such an amazing scene, and this snowflakes fall on his head when he's newly born, and it's the same drop of water that fell on this king many thousand years ago. So you follow this water throughout the story. It's just mostly in the beginning where every person we meet it's important, but water is always a good, interesting part of this book. So first we meet him, and then we meet a girl called Narin, who lives in Turkey by the river Tigris, because Mesopotamia doesn't exist anymore. And I think she's maybe 8 when we meet her. And that's in 2014, so it's not a very long time ago. And then later we meet Salika, who lives in London, 2018. So it's only 4 years later. And of course, this all wraps up in the end in different ways. Well, we could say that everything starts with Arthur. He's, as I think I said, he's extremely intelligent. He remembers everything that he's been through, which is not always very nice for him. I mean, he is born in a slum. He's called King Arthur, the king of the slums. And yeah, he goes to an ordinary school. I mean, for poor children. The teachers, one of his teacher notices how brilliant he is, but unfortunately he stops working there for some reason, and he has a very bad meeting with the headmaster, and he leaves the school and determines never to go back. And he goes past this big museum in London, National Museum in London, I guess, I don't remember the name, where he sees these giant figures, lamassus, which I mentioned before, and they are maybe kind of swing slides, a mix of different animals. You get them described in the beginning of the book, and you also get to see pictures also. I think it's like an ox, and yeah, it's a mix of different animals anyway. And he gets so fascinated by these, and he meets a man who works there, and this man realizes how intelligent Arthur is, and tells him, come and visit whenever you want. But he never does that. He doesn't dare go there because he's very poor. He doesn't have nice clothes, and he takes several years before he goes. And his horrible father makes one really good choice. He gets a job for Arthur at a printer's place, and this is a real place that has existed. And there he can read. He has this safe haven there. He meets Charles Dickens, and Charles Dickens is very nice to him. And just through that kind of brief meeting, Arthur realizes, Charles Dickens does care for the English poor boys, but he doesn't care about people in other countries, so to speak. So, which I've seen before in other books where he's mentioned. We've seen, if you read Babel, that's presented there also. But, I remember when I read Babel, I was quite shocked of he was described as very racistic. Well, anyway, so he starts working there, and later in his life, he finally goes to a museum, and he really wants to see these lamassus. He doesn't find them, but he finds something even more interesting. You get to see these tablets with this special language on them. It's called something very special. Let's see if I've written it down. Maybe not. Well, it doesn't matter. But this language is mentioned several times. I should know it. Anyway, he sees these tablets, and even if he can't read them yet, he does see there is a pattern to them. And he meets this man again who works there and tells him that, and he's really impressed by him again, and says, "Oh, you can. Nobody cares so much about these. You can come here and look as much as you want." And which he does. He goes there every day, and finally he gets to work there, but he doesn't get paid very much. So he still working at the print, and so he kind of rushes forwards and backwards. So that's the start of the story with Arthur. And Narin, she lives, as I said, in Turkey with her grandmother. Her mother is dead, and her father is a musician, so he isn't around very much. And they are very special people, Yazidis, which I've also never heard of before. And so they're kind of shunned both by Muslims and Christians, and a very small group of people. And really fascinating to read about their view of, their religious view of everything was created. And they are most probably related back in time to the Mesopotamian people. So there's so much to learn from this book. Really fascinating and also very, very sad, especially but Naren's story is very sad, but also Arthur's. And then we also meet this young woman called, she has a special name, Salika. And she's a scientist, hydrologist, she studies water, of course. And that's also really interesting to see. She talks about hidden rivers. There are rivers in London and Paris and other cities where you don't see them anymore. They've been built over. And Paris, they mentioned a river in Paris, the Bièvre, which I've also read. It's so interesting when you read a book and learn something, and then you read another book about something totally different, and you find something mentioned there that you read in the first book. So this city Bièvre is also mentioned in a book I'm reading right now, and that is The Night of Maison Rouge by Alexandre Dumas. And I just wanted to read this little short notice about Bièvre. This is lovely, quite a dramatic young man who falls in love with a woman. I'm sunk, he said to himself. They'll put a stone around my neck and throw me into some hole in the Bièvre River. So there was, well, you can't see the Bièvre anymore, at least not in the city, Paris. Maybe outside, I don't know. But so you only see the same. So that was a fun thing. Yes. Anyway, I want to read you some quotes. So this first one is about Naren. Her grandmother is a very wise woman. She's a water dowser. She can find water, and she's also a healer. Anyway, so this is what she says to Naren. Well, this world is a school, and we are students. Each of us studies something as we pass through. Some people learn love, kindness. Others, I'm afraid, abuse and brutality. But the best students are those who acquire generosity and compassion from their encounters with hardship and cruelty. The ones who choose not to inflict the suffering onto others. And what you learn is what you take with you to your grave. Yeah, it's beautiful and sad. And this is why she's asking, why are people hating us so much? Yeah. Religion. And then I want to read another quote. In Arthur's world, his boss at the printer, Mr. Bradbury, they're talking about, well, the work and reading and books and printing in the world. Well, the world is changing faster than minds can grasp. Speaking of speed like a steam engine, all these smartly turned out people with their polished boots and affected airs. You look at them and you think they must know everything, educated and cultured as they are. But I'll let you in on a secret. When times are confusing, everybody is a little lost. No one is as inwardly confident as they present themselves to be. Hence the reason we must read, my boy. Books, like paper lanterns, provide us with a light amidst the fog. That is why this is the perfect time to be in the business of publishing. And I really like this too. I mean, it's so true that when times are confusing, everybody is a little lost. And unfortunately, I would say times are confusing quite a lot. Yeah. So Arthur really has a lovely relationship with his boss there, and yeah, I don't want to say too much because I want you to read it, but it's sad. yeah, and this is back to Naren again. And she's talking about, she's thinking about her grandmother. Grandma says one should also pay homage to the sun and the moon, which are celestial siblings. Every morning at dawn she goes up to the roof to salute the first light, and when she prays, she faces the sun. After dark she sends a prayer to the orb of night. One must always walk the earth with wonder, for it is full of miracles yet to be witnessed. Trees you must think of not only for what they are above ground, but also for what remains invisible below. Birds, rocks, tussocks and thickets of gorse. Even the tiniest insects are to be treasured. But as a water dowser, it is the tigress that the old woman holds in the highest esteem. Yeah, I really love this. One must always walk the earth with wonder, and I feel that's really, really true. It doesn't matter if you're religious or not. It's not about that. It's about being in awe of everything, a lot of things anyway, and see the wonder. Yeah. And then I want to read another quote, and this is around Salika. She meets, I think it's said, Salika has just left her husband and her uncle, who comes from Turkey, and her parents as well, or at least her mother, I think. He's very traditional and doesn't really like that, so he invites her and tries to think to change her mind. But she brings her new friend Nan instead, who, just like her uncle, are really obsessed by the old times, and she's obsessed by the Epic of Gilgamesh. And I don't think I said it, but his work leads to that he finds the Epic of Gilgamesh, and so in this book he is the person who translates the whole Epic of Gilgamesh. So everything is connected. Anyway, so this is a quote from the Epic of Gilgamesh. Where you set your mind, begin the journey. Let your heart have no fear. Keep your eyes on me. And that's Enkidu. I really need to read the Epic of Gilgamesh now. But I understand this. Gilgamesh is a person, and Enkidu is another one, a friend, I think. Anyway, so yeah, makes you. So the Epic of Gilgamesh is probably one of the most old stories, poems ever written down, which is fascinating that it still exists, right? This is later in the book. It's the quote from Arthur when he finally goes to Tigris to find more tablets, and he's fallen in love with a woman called Lila, who is Naren's great grandmother, I think. And yeah, so he's kind of sad. And anyway, all his life Arthur has made every effort to broaden experience and expand his knowledge. He never thought there would come a day when he would wonder if it were preferable to live in innocence and die in ignorance instead. And this is about a premonition that Lila makes. So it's not really about that he's sad, but he's worried for her and for her people. Yes, and then there's the secret goddess, Nisaba, which is, well, not secret, forgotten goddess. She was a very big goddess in Mesopotamia, but was forgotten for a male god instead, who was the god of writing. Well, he became the. Anyway, she's the goddess of grain and harvest, the one who holds sway over the rain, directing every drop that falls from the sky. In her pictures, she carries in one hand a stalk of wheat, the symbol of life, renewal and rebirth. In her other hand, she holds a gold stylus and a tablet of lapis lazuli. The roots of agriculture and the roots of literature are intertwined, and it's none other than Nisala who braids them like a lock of her hair. So yeah, that's really interesting. You can see, or you can really hear the voice of the author. She writes so beautiful all the time. I read this really slowly. I read it for almost a month actually. I read small parts. Try to read every day, and my last thing is not a quote, but it's about a poem that when Arthur is in Mesopotamia, his friend Mahmud, who's taking him everywhere, he can't leave him alone in the desert. Mahmud tells him, when he sees how sad Arthur is about Lila, he talks about this famous poem, Lila and Mainun. And it's also a real poem that has existed, real. And it was a man called Quace who was in love with Lila. They were in love, but they could never be together. She was married off to another, and he lost his mind, so he became Mainun, which means the possessed. So he's turned into a poet and starts wandering the desert, and he's consumed by his thoughts of Lila. And this poem, Lila and Mainun, I have also heard about before in a totally different book, in a fantasy book, in a fantasy series by Roshani Shaksi. The first book is called, let's see, I've written it down. The Gilded Wolves is the first book, but I think they mention this poem several times, maybe not in the first book, but there's also a person called Lila in that book. So it's like, okay, now I've heard about this poem twice. Obviously, I need to read it, and also a very, very old poem, obviously. So yeah, it's just, you have to read this book. It's amazing, and maybe I've told you too much, but I didn't think so. But as I said, everything's connected. Everything is around water and the forgotten goddess and Lamasu's figures. And yeah, it's just an amazing story. And this covered rivers, that's so interesting, isn't it? Kind of crazy. So that was that book, but I also want to talk a little bit about a book I read after, because I'm giving back to the library soon. So, but I really wanted to show you this pretty cover, Raising Hare by Chloe Dalton. Look at these pictures. It's also a very poetical book, I would say. It's totally different than the other book. But this woman, Chloe Dalton, has written the book. She writes about her own life. And she's English. Before COVID, she was working all the time, working for around politics, and that was her whole life, just working. And during COVID, she left the city. She goes to the countryside where she has this cottage, kind of, and very quickly she finds an abandoned baby hare, which is called leveret. So that's also a new word I've learned. And so most of this book is about this leveret and how her whole life changes when she takes care of it. She first tries to leave it because she knows she shouldn't touch wild baby animal, because the mother won't take it then if you touch it. But she comes back several hours later and it's still just lying there, and she can't just leave it. So she takes it in and she learns as much as she can how to take care of this leveret. And it's just an amazing story about life, about nature, about hares. And I mean, most of the story is about her talking about how the leveret behaves and leaves and comes back, and later when that hare gets her own babies. And but it's also a lot about how hares has been a symbol of like witches, apparently, in older times. And she talks about Chaucer, who apparently had several hares. And she refers a lot to literature as well. But I also find the language is really, really beautiful and very reflective. So I wanted to read a little quote from this one as well. This is towards the end of the book. As we jostle for space on this planet, for position and place and name, and agonize about missteps and paths lost, and feel the fragility of our hopes and all that we hold dear, I think of the hare, stepping lightly on the earth, taking cover if the wind blows. We are not so dissimilar. If we do not achieve all upon which we have set our hearts, or are beaten back by headwinds stronger than our desires, we too can lay up a while, watch the glitter on the grass, and renew our strength. Yeah, that's beautiful. And she really learns how to relax from this hair. She really learns how to see nature and see animals and realize how much we destroy our nature just by making roads, just by having lights outside, just by picking up potatoes with big machines. And so there are some kind of sad moments in this, but it's really, it really makes you think about how we behave to animals and how our life, how we live as humans, affect the animals around us. So yeah, that was the books I want to talk about today. I hope you felt inspired. Oh yeah, and then I also wanted to show you, because I really put some effort this time in making a nice September name in my book diary, and I found some really nice little stickers to put in. Yeah, so I'll see you later in the end of September. Bye.